Table 14 corner booth. A single white candle burning between two empty wine glasses. Turning 70 deserved better than this. I wore the silver blouse I had bought specifically for tonight, the one with the delicate lace collar. I had my hair styled that morning at the salon down the street. I made the reservation at this Italian place a month in advance, asking for the quiet booth by the window. I ordered nothing. I just waited. 7 o'clock became 7:30. The waiter passed by 3 times, refilling a water glass I never touched. I smiled politely and murmured, "She is on her way." I almost believed it myself the first time. But by the third refill, the ice had melted, and so had my patience. I picked up my phone and dialed. Sarah picked up on the 4th ring. Behind her, a bar roared. A whistle shrieked through the speakers, followed by a chorus of men groaning at a missed play. "Sarah," I began, my voice steady. "Where are you?" "Mom, Greg's team is in the finals," she shouted over the noise. "We are at the sports pub on 5th. It is a huge game." I stared at the empty chair across from me. The candlelight flickered on the polished mahogany table. "It is my 70th birthday, Sarah. We had dinner plans." She sighed, a long, drawn-out sound of pure annoyance, as if I had interrupted a medical emergency to ask about the weather. "Mom, please don't do this guilt trip thing right now. You'll still be here tomorrow. The game is only tonight." I turned that sentence over in my mind. "You'll still be here tomorrow." Like a piece of forgotten furniture, like a backup plan she could return to whenever it suited her. "Enjoy the game," I replied, ending the call before she could offer another excuse. I did not cry. I have never been a public crier. I simply flagged down the waiter, ordered a slice of tiramisu for one, and ate every single bite. It tasted surprisingly like freedom. When I finished, I paid the bill, walked to my car, and decided exactly what I was going to leave behind for her to find. The drive back to my house took exactly 20 minutes. The neighborhood was quiet, bathed in the soft orange glow of the streetlights. I pulled into my driveway and parked, resting my hands on the steering wheel for a moment to look at the property. Behind my main house stood the renovated guest cottage. Sarah and Greg had been living there rent-free for 3 years. The arrangement started as a temporary favor so they could save for a down payment. Instead, the driveway filled with Amazon packages, Greg bought a new gaming setup, and their weekends were spent at expensive bars. I paid the utilities. I paid the internet. I even kept them on my family cell phone plan. I unlocked my front door, stepped inside, and dropped my purse on the console table. The silence of the house wrapped around me, familiar and safe. I walked straight to my home office and opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside sat a heavy pair of stainless steel scissors. I carried them into the kitchen and opened my wallet, pulling out the blue credit card. It was a joint account, one I opened to help Sarah build her credit. But she treated it like a magic wand for her daily coffee runs and Greg's streaming subscriptions. With a satisfying crunch, the scissors sliced right through the magnetic strip. I cut it again, severing the chip. I gathered the plastic pieces and walked out the back door, crossing the lawn to the guest cottage. I used my master key to unlock their door. The living room was a mess of takeout boxes and discarded jackets. I walked to their kitchen island, cleared a small space, and placed the shattered pieces of the credit card right in the center. Next to it, I set my spare house key, the one Sarah used to raid my pantry. I didn't write a long, emotional letter. I simply left a sticky note next to the plastic shards. Happy tomorrow. I locked their door behind me, feeling lighter than I had in years. The real work would start in the morning. I woke up at 6, my usual time, feeling surprisingly rested. I brewed a pot of dark roast coffee, poured a mug, and carried it into my home office. I booted up my computer. First, I logged into my bank portal. I navigated to the credit card dashboard, selected Sarah's name under Authorized Users, and clicked Remove. The system asked for confirmation. I clicked it without hesitation. Next, I opened the website for my cell phone provider. I viewed the family plan, located the two lines belonging to Sarah and Greg, and suspended them. The screen refreshed, confirming their devices no longer had network access. Finally, I checked my checking account for the automated utility payments. The water and electricity for the guest house were on a separate meter, but I had always covered them. I logged into the utility company's portal, canceled my autopay, and updated the billing address to the guest house directly. I did all of this while sipping my coffee, watching the morning sun filter through the oak trees outside my window. There was no anger pulsing through my veins, no dramatic tears blurring my vision, just a cold, sharp clarity. For 3 years, I had smoothed their path, thinking I was being a good mother. I mistook my enabling for love. I allowed myself to become a convenient background character in my own life, an ATM that occasionally required a polite nod. I closed the laptop and walked to the front door of my main house. I engaged the deadbolt, latched the chain, and reprogrammed the code on the smart lock to a completely new set of numbers. Through the kitchen window, I saw the lights flickering on in the guest cottage. It was 7:30. Sarah usually made her daily coffee run around 8, paid for by the blue card, while complaining on a phone call she didn't pay for. I poured myself a second cup of coffee and walked out to the back patio to tend to my hydrangeas. I wanted to enjoy the fresh morning air when the realization finally hit them. The back door of the guest cottage flew open just past 8:15. Sarah marched across the lawn, phone glued to her hand, her face pinched in a scowl. She was still wearing her pajamas and a heavy robe. I continued snipping dead blooms off the hydrangea bushes, placing them carefully into a woven basket. "Mom!" Sarah yelled, stopping a few feet away from the patio. I turned around slowly, offering a calm, pleasant smile. "Good morning, Sarah. The garden is lovely today, isn't it?" She completely ignored the greeting, waving her phone in the air. "The internet is down, and my phone says no service. I tried to order breakfast on the app, and it told me the card was invalid. I went to the island and saw what you left. I picked up my gardening shears and snipped another stem." "Yes, I terminated the card last night." She stared at me, blinking hard, struggling to process the lack of emotion in my voice. "Why would you do that? You know Greg needs his coffee before his morning meetings. And why is my phone turned off? Because I am no longer paying for it," I answered, dropping the shears into the basket. "I spent the evening reviewing my budget. Since I am apparently just someone who will still be here tomorrow, I realized I do not need to fund the daily expenses of 2 capable adults today." Her jaw dropped. "Are you punishing me because I missed dinner, Mom? I told you it was the finals. You are being entirely unreasonable over a birthday." "I am not punishing you," I replied smoothly, wiping my hands on my apron. "I am simply stepping back. I raised you. My job is done. Your phone bills and your morning coffees are your responsibility now." I picked up my basket and walked past her, heading toward my back door. "You can't just cut us off without warning," she shouted at my back. I paused with my hand on the doorknob, glancing over my shoulder. "I just did. Have a productive day, Sarah." I stepped inside and locked the door, leaving her standing alone on the grass. An hour later, the heavy thud of a fist pounded against my front door. I was sitting at the kitchen table, reading a mystery novel. I marked my page, stood up, and walked to the entryway. I checked the peephole. It was Greg. He looked flushed, his arms crossed tight across his chest, Sarah standing right behind him, looking vindicated. I unlatched the door and opened it a few inches, keeping the chain lock securely in place. "Lorraine," Greg started using that deep, authoritative voice he always adopted when he wanted to control a room. "We need to talk about this immature little stunt." "There is no stunt, Greg," I stated, looking him right in the eye. "And there is nothing to discuss. You locked Sarah out of the accounts." He pushed, gesturing aggressively toward the driveway. "And you changed the code on the house lock. Sarah tried to come in to grab some laundry detergent and she couldn't get in." That is correct, I agreed. My laundry detergent belongs to me. The guest house has its own washer. You will need to buy your own supplies. Greg scoffed, shaking his head. Look, we get it. You're mad about the restaurant. But cutting off the phones, messing with our morning routine. That's petty. Unlock the door and let's sit down and fix this. My house is closed to guests today. I answered, entirely unbothered by his posturing. Your utility bills will arrive in the mail next week. I transferred the accounts to your names. The free ride is over. Sarah pushed past Greg's shoulder, her face red. You are completely overreacting. How are we supposed to save for a house if you make us pay for everything? By budgeting, I suggested mildly. The same way I did. I stepped back and gently pushed the door shut, ignoring Greg's loud protests. I slid the deadbolt into place with a sharp final click. I walked back to my kitchen table, opened my novel, and picked up right where I left off. Outside, I heard Greg cursing as they stomped back to the guest house. My cell phone rang just after lunch. The caller ID flashed David's name. My oldest son lived 2 towns over busy with his own family, but he always found time for me. Happy belated birthday, Mom. He greeted warmly as I answered. I'm so sorry I couldn't make it to town yesterday. I have a gift for you coming in the mail. Thank you, David. Hearing your voice is gift enough. He paused, the line growing quiet for a second. So Sarah called me about an hour ago, crying hysterically. I chuckled softly, leaning back against the kitchen counter. Did she tell you she skipped my birthday dinner for a soccer game? She left that part out. David noted, his tone dry. She just said you went crazy, cut off her phone, and locked her out of the main house. I had to pry the restaurant detail out of her. I told her she was acting like an entitled teenager. She didn't like that, I assume. She hung up on me. David laughed. Mom, I am so proud of you. I've been telling you for 2 years, they take advantage of you. You know Greg just bought a $2,000 home theater system for that cottage, right? They aren't saving for a house. They are just spending all their money on toys while you pay their living expenses. The confirmation settled heavily in my chest, but it only strengthened my resolve. I suspected as much. Well, their expenses are their own problem now. Good, David agreed firmly. Stand your ground. Don't let Greg intimidate you. He's all bark. If they show up banging on your door again, you call me and I will drive straight over there. I can handle Greg, I assured him, looking out the window at the guest cottage. I am just taking back what is mine. Love you, Mom. Enjoy your peace. I love you too, David. I ended the call feeling completely validated. The fog of obligation I had lived in for years was finally lifting. I wasn't being cruel. I was simply restoring order. And I had one more thing to reclaim. Greg drove a silver pickup truck. He drove in it to work, to his soccer games, and to the bars with his friends. He treated it like his prized possession, regularly polishing the hood and bragging about the engine. There was only one problem: my name was on the title. When Greg's old sedan broke down 2 years ago, I purchased the used truck outright so he wouldn't lose his job. The agreement was that he would pay me back monthly. He made exactly 2 payments before the excuses started. I eventually stopped asking, writing it off as helping family. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, I walked into my garage and pulled the spare key fob for the truck out of a lockbox on the wall. I hit the button. Outside, the silver truck beeped, twice the lights flashing. I walked out the side door, climbed into the driver's seat, and started the engine. It ran smoothly. I backed it slowly out of its usual spot near the guest cottage, drove it around the driveway, and pulled it directly into my attached 2-car garage. I turned off the ignition, stepped out, and hit the button on the wall. The heavy garage door rattled down, sealing the truck inside in perfect darkness. I locked the side door with a heavy padlock for good measure. Then I went back into the house, picked up my tablet, and navigated to a local auto buyer website. I typed in the truck's VN mileage and condition. Within 5 minutes, I had a guaranteed cash offer that was more than reasonable. I scheduled a pickup for the following Tuesday. I felt a profound sense of satisfaction. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply auditing my life, closing out bad investments, and removing liabilities. I poured a glass of iced tea and sat by the window watching the guest house, waiting for Greg to realize his favorite toy was gone. The realization happened at 6:30. Greg emerged from the guest house dressed in a team jersey, twirling his keychain. He stopped dead in the middle of the driveway. He looked left. He looked right. He stared at the empty patch of asphalt where the truck usually sat. I watched him pull out his phone, holding it up as if he couldn't get a signal because he couldn't. He jogged back inside. 2 minutes later, both he and Sarah marched straight toward my front porch. The doorbell rang incessantly. I finished my sip of tea, walked to the door, and opened it just enough to speak through the screen. "Where is my truck?" Greg demanded, his face tight with fury. "Did it get towed?" "It is in my garage," I answered calmly. He blinked clearly, confused. "Why I need to go to practice? Give me the clicker so I can get it out." "No," I replied, resting my hands on my hips. "I am selling it." Sarah gasped, pressing her hands against the screen. "Mom, you can't do that. How is he supposed to get to work?" "He can take the bus," I suggested. "Or you can drive him in your car. The truck belongs to me. My name is on the title and I pay the insurance. Since he hasn't made a payment in 22 months, I am liquidating the asset." Greg stepped forward, trying to loom over me through the mesh. "You gave me that truck. You can't just take it back because you're throwing a tantrum." "I am not throwing a tantrum, Greg. I am making a financial decision." I corrected him, my voice completely flat. "The dealership is picking it up next week. I suggest you clean out your gym bags and whatever else you left inside by Monday evening." "This is ridiculous," Greg yelled, hitting the door frame with the flat of his hand. "You're ruining our lives over a stupid birthday dinner." "You made your choices," I stated simply. "I am making mine. Have a good evening." I shut the inner door, leaving them shouting on the porch. Sunday morning brought the final attempt at manipulation. I was sitting on the patio, enjoying a croissant, when Sarah stomped across the lawn, dragging a large, rolling suitcase. Greg followed close behind, carrying a duffel bag, looking deeply uncomfortable. Sarah stopped right in front of my patio table, crossing her arms. She looked at me expectantly, waiting for a reaction. When I simply took another bite of my pastry, she huffed loudly. "We are leaving!" Sarah announced, her voice pitched high for maximum drama. "Since you want to treat us like strangers, we are going to stay at Greg's brother's house. And if you don't apologize and turn my phone back on, you aren't going to see us anymore." She waited. She expected me to crumble to beg her to stay, to offer the credit card back on a silver platter. That was how the game had always worked. I wiped my mouth with a napkin, stood up, and walked over to the outdoor storage bench. I opened the lid, pulled out a stack of flattened moving boxes I had saved from a recent furniture delivery, and carried them over. I dropped the stack right at Sarah's feet. "I think that is best," I agreed, my tone light and sincere. "Greg's brother has plenty of space. Here are some boxes for the rest of your things. Please have the cottage completely emptied by next weekend. I want to hire a cleaning crew to prep it for real renters." Sarah stared at the cardboard at her feet, the color draining entirely from her face. The bluff had failed. "You're kicking us out. You just said you were leaving," I reminded her gently. "I am simply agreeing with your decision. It is time for you to manage your own household." Greg dropped his duffel bag, looking nervously at Sarah. "Babe, maybe we should just calm down and—" "No," I interrupted smoothly. The decision is made. Take the boxes. I will leave the garage unlocked tomorrow between noon and 4 so you can retrieve your items from the truck. Goodbye, Sarah. I picked up my coffee cup and walked back inside, leaving them standing in the grass, utterly speechless. They moved out entirely by Thursday. They didn't come to say goodbye. They packed their things in sullen silence, loading everything into a rented van. I watched from the window, feeling no urge to go out and help. On Friday morning, I walked through the empty guest cottage. It smelled stale, and the carpets needed a deep clean, but the space was finally mine again. I opened all the windows, letting the crisp breeze sweep through the rooms, carrying away 3 years of tension. I hired a professional cleaning service that afternoon. By the following Wednesday, the cottage was listed online as a short-term rental. The extra income would easily cover a nice vacation for myself by the winter. Sarah didn't call. I didn't reach out either. I knew she was waiting for me to break the silence, but the silence was too peaceful to disturb. A month later, David drove down to visit. He brought a beautiful potted orchid and a reservation confirmation. Table 14. David smiled, handing me the slip of paper. I called the restaurant and explained the situation. They saved the exact corner booth for us tonight. I wore the silver blouse with the lace collar again. We sat in the warm glow of the restaurant, sharing a bottle of wine, laughing at old stories. The chair across from me wasn't empty this time. It was filled with someone who actually wanted to be there. When the waiter brought out a small chocolate cake with a single candle, I didn't make a wish for Sarah to change or for Greg to respect me. I didn't need to wish for control I already held in my own hands. I blew out the candle, smiling at my son. Sarah was right about one thing that night on the phone. I was still here tomorrow. I just wasn't here for her anymore.